All right, There Will Be Banter returns, and that light that I have in my face is entirely too bright. So anyway, tonight we have a new guy standing in, but before we get to him, we must mention that we do have the two staples of this wonderful banter program, and that is the lovable left-wing gun-toting liberal Veronika Lopez. How are you?
I'm doing well, and also last man standing from the original.
That is true.
Original
They're
crew.
dropping. They are dropping, and I may be blind by the end of this if I keep looking into this light. Anyway, or this camera. And then also to my left, your right, we have the average.
Decent.
Okay, she's decent. We have a decent civilian reporter, Kristina Wong. How are you, madam?
You, I am doing well. It's been kind of a crazy week, so I feel like I deserve this drink, this purple drink.
This purple drink. She does have purple drink, courtesy of.
I don't even know what this thing is. It's a cherry.
It is a cherry. Those are the bourbon cherries. Those are the good ones right there.
Cherry with like a toothpick, with a matching toothpick.
Yeah. Courtesy of Aaron the bartender, aka her.
My bartender.
Yeah, the better half. Yeah, let's go with better half. And then we have we'll work on something for you, Ben, but for now you will be the Aussie transplant. Ben Bridge. Welcome, sir. How are you?
Hey, everyone. I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
I am told by a certain person that you have an arsenal. Is that true?
Oh, I guess it depends on your definition of arsenal. So,
and that doesn't, you can't do that in Australia, can you?
Not really.
That's why he lives in the US. He's basically a Sasquatch doomsday prepper.
And my arsenal, I have a nice folding knife and a bow. Both of the things I couldn't have in Australia.
You can't have a folding knife or a bow?
If I got caught riding public transport in Australia with a folding knife, that would be a weapons offence.
What's a folding knife? Like a knife that just
Remember
folds?
those ones that we showed last week, Kristina?
After like literally
like that.
Yeah.
You can.
Ben's like, should I go get it? Don't do it. I don't want you to get in trouble.
But I'm in America, land of the free, home of the brave. So
now, I have right. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
You guys can't have, but what can you own in Australia in terms? Is there?
Look, you still can have guns. It's just there's a lot of extra steps to get them, which I honestly think Australia's gone too far. I think New Zealand had about the right sweet spot for my comfort level before the arsehole Aussie that went and killed 50 people in Christchurch a year ago. Yeah. I thought their gun laws were pretty sensible, and that arsehole got hold of that weapon by none of those laws being followed. So
imagine that. It's the same issue we have in the United States. Did you know this, Ben? Criminals do not follow gun laws.
Really?
No, it's fucking amazing. Me. Criminals will do anything they want to because that is what defines them as criminals. Yes.
Yep.
Well, anyway, welcome to our wonderful
it's great to be here.
Discussion.
He also dropped the first swear word.
Did he? He did. Good job. Profanity is highly encouraged here.
Well, what are you? I feel like arsehole is not really a swear word.
That's true. It's more.
Not in Australia. That's pretty mild for Australia.
Yeah. So like for those of you guys with like delicate sensibilities, like earmuffs for the next 5 seconds. But like the ultimate compliment that he has given me at one point was, "You're a top cunt." So like.
Yeah,
it's used a lot in Australia, and as Veronika just demonstrated, it can be used as a term of endearment.
So would that be like a female rapper referring to herself as a quote bad bitch?
It's better than that. Bad bitch is
that'd be like a good cunt, I think, right? Like, oh, you're a good cunt. That's a bad bitch. But like a top cunt's like you're a fucking
you're way
like off the chart. Yeah.
Well, welcome either way, Ben. It's good to have you as a stand-in for the night. I'm looking forward to hearing you banter about with us ridiculous individuals who populate this country. Hopefully you don't get too bored with our stupidity. I am one who is full of it, and then the other two, fortunately, they balance this out with actual intellect and commentary. I'm just here to herd cats, and fortunately the cat that runs around here is not with us at the moment. but more to follow on that. So tonight I wanted to discuss and get your takes on a lot of the things that are going on, mainly being the ongoing legal battles that are still going on in certain states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, et cetera. We kind of touched on this last week. And then also conveniently, and as I think we all kind of realized or, anticipated, there is and was an announcement for a coronavirus vaccine. So, Veronika, talk to me about what's going on in Pennsylvania at the moment.
Oof. So I'm gonna, and I'll pull up the exact quote too, so I'm not, talking out of my ass here.
Spitballing.
Just spitballing. So obviously, as we know, there have been several, there's a lot of litigation happening regarding the ballots, and it's a multitude of reasons, right? Mm-hmm. So what's really interesting is that I guess a lot of the litigators on the behalf of, I'm going to say the Trump campaign, but it turns out, so I actually thought it was like the Trump campaign pursuing all of these, but it turns out it's actually not. Like some of them are like the state GOP, some of them are independent. Yeah, state parties, or even I think like just like groups of people that are just really passionate about the other.
Yeah, we talked about how like in Pennsylvania, I think it's Pennsylvania, where all you got to do is have 3 signatures and you can.
Yeah. So it turns out that those people.
Concerned citizens.
Yeah,
concerned citizens. That's a really good a good term. I like that. So yeah, concerned citizens. But it seems like not. I'm going to say well-intentioned citizens, perhaps. But it seems like they're having issues actually getting any of the like litigation passed beyond just like the initial court hearing. So the specific thing that I was going to say today in court, a Pennsylvania judge asked a lawyer point blank whether they had any evidence to support anything. And the quote from the judge on like the docket or on the actual like court documents is, "Are you claiming that there's any fraud in connection with the 592 disputed ballots?" And then Mr. Goldstein, the lawyer, goes, "To my knowledge at present, no." The court.
That's a totally perfect lawyer answer, though. To my knowledge, presently. Now,
right, but the problem is, but the problem is that you can't bring any sort of litigation in court without like an actual like evidence or case or anything. So you can't, like, it's basically the problem is that they can't make shit up, right? And say, yeah, we have this stuff that we're working, like, because they could be disbarred for shit like that.
Right, which is why I said it's a total lawyer answer. He's not committing.
Right, exactly. So it's just really interesting. It just seems like now, while I understand, like, hey, we were talking about prior about some of the, like the ballots that are maybe not time stamped or that were counted after the fact, or like after like, the specific guidelines or voter guidelines being thrown out because, voter responsibility and they did not adhere to the rules. I get that. Like, I have a completely different opinion on voting as a whole, but like, I can understand that. Like, okay, this didn't fall within the left and right limits of what's allowed.
First F-bomb of the night.
Was it? I don't see. It rolls just comes out so easily. I don't know. No, so naturally. But I think to me, it just seems like a lot of grandstanding and maybe smoke, like a lot of smoke and mirrors, just to sort of.
There was, and so hold on. So
perpetuate that.
Ben, is this your first election in the United States since you've been here?
Yeah, in terms of presidential, yeah.
Okay, well, congratulations. Welcome to
welcome to the show.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I hope you're taking notes to take this back to your homeland to show you how to really do this whole voting stuff.
Well, there's only 27 million of us, so it's a little bit easier to do things back in Australia.
It's a lot of land though. Still a lot of land to cover. You guys mostly in that big circle on the coast though, right? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Big circle? Yeah. What are you taking away from this? Are you watching this kind of just like, is this really how things go here? Or is this something that are you kind of, do you feel like this is an actual good thing because it is people actually participating in a democracy and they're fighting for their side one way or the other? Or how do you interpret this from an outsider's perspective?
So let's go back 4 years. That was the first time watching partially watching the primaries, but definitely watching the presidential race and just being like, Really, this is out of 370
That's
million
it.
Americans.
That's the best we got. You're right. Yes.
That's it. That's okay. This is super interesting. So, I think I had 35 marriage proposals the day after Trump was, declared
He's not
declared
kidding.
president-elect. So, because I was in Kuwait at the time, and there was people taking numbers to like, oh, so
So Trump was
wife.
good for your dating life. That's good.
Yeah, well, he would have been if I didn't have a girlfriend back in Australia waiting for me at the time. So, 2016, I guess, was the first time I took a decent interest in, and since 2016 to today, I've been more mindful of sort of following things. So this time around, I actually followed the primaries, and was amazed at how poorly the DNC set themselves up for this election.
You mean Joe Biden wasn't the guy that you thought was?
Amazingly, no. In my opinion, the DNC had an opportunity to basically take 4 years to find a small group of candidates who would be good options for the US public. And they could have had the ultra left Bernie Sanders, and then someone who was closer to the right and had a smaller spectrum in between. And as opposed to having the DNC debates where they all kind of try to cut each other's Achilles and beat each other's faces in with bowling balls, it could have been more like of a fireside chat where they agreed on the core values of the party, e.g., they wanted more affordable healthcare, more affordable education, more tax for corporations and rich people, whatever it is. And then the way that those candidates would navigate to that end state would differ by degree, not huge wholesale change. But they didn't do that. They had basically it was like beyond Thunderdome. They put 30 candidates in there with edged weapons, and
and they took the guy who was consistently fourth place.
Yeah.
He didn't show
I will say
up.
this.
He wasn't even.
I will say this. Bernie Sanders, I thought was a crazy person until I watched the Joe Rogan show a while back, and it was 2.5 hours of Bernie. You got him credit for sticking to his guns for 4 decades.
Oh,
so
yeah. You got to go back and watch those Trevor Noah tapes. It's great stuff.
Yeah. He hasn't moved. This time around, I was horrified at how poorly the DNC set themselves up. And until COVID hit, I was convinced that Trump was going to get a second term, because he was just sitting back, and the best campaign tool the RNC had going for it was the DNC, because you were just watching them tear each other apart, and it was like, wow, you guys didn't learn a damn thing from 2016.
Nothing.
So, but here we are. And honestly, I think that the process now, from what I'm reading through multiple news sources, is a nuisance. And it's wasteful of people's time and money. If there was legitimate concern about how things are, because everything I've read in terms of about ballots being wrong or whatever, most of those happened back in September, October timeframe, and then they realized that they kind of screwed the pooch, and new ballots went out, additional safeguards were put in if they were mail-in ballots or whatever. So I just think now it's kind of sore loser syndrome, I think, and it's not going to affect the outcome. It's just going to cost the taxpayer another $50 to $100 million to recount ballots.
Well, you maybe from what I've read, and I could be wrong, you might be right, but from what I've read, most of these states, if any of this stuff goes on, it's up to actually the Trump campaign to pay for. I don't think it's the burden of the taxpayer. I could be wrong on that. I'll probably research it and come back next week. But Kristina, what do you think? Everything you've heard there, what's your takeaway on these things at this point? And real quick, before you do that, Ben, what are you drinking? You got the Incredible Hulk going on over there? What is that? It looks green.
Just uranium.
Oh, that's
heaps
good.
of it in Australia. So 44%
of the
known uranium reserves are in Australia. So
Fucking idiot.
Crocodile hunter juice.
Yeah.
All right, Kristina, weigh in here. What do you got?
Yeah. Okay. Now this time I'm just gonna try to spit out what I'm trying to say, although it's a little easier this time than last time. But well, I guess with the whole, the article that Veronika sent earlier today, because we send each other articles in advance, there was that one about the lawyer not wanting to say that there was fraud.
Right.
But taking a very literal reading of the transcript, I don't think he was seeming to say that it didn't matter whether there was a fraud, because if you do claim fraud, you're going to have to prove it right then and there. And I think what he said was that doesn't matter. What matters is that the ballots didn't come in, it didn't meet the qualifications and it shouldn't be counted. And that kind of goes back to what we mentioned in the beginning, where Democrats, or I'm not sure if it was on the podcast or before the podcast, but Democrats have a view that every vote should count. And, that's hard to argue against, right? But I was talking to our friend Amy Marisol, who said to me, so, do you not, she didn't say do you not, but she was like, what about homeless people? Should they be allowed to vote? And it's kind of like, yeah, of course, everyone should have their voice heard, but the DNC is like, well, people who normally wouldn't have access to ballots, everyone should be heard. Everyone should get their voice heard. So you can't disqualify any ballot, whereas in a normal circumstance, there are ballots that get disqualified because you don't follow the directions, but those directions are there to reduce voter fraud.
Right.
I'm not actually the best read up on all the court cases, but the way I do things is, I go back to the way beginning, and it's actually extremely time consuming. So I was reading about Pennsylvania, and I think I sent you guys
that long
article about it.
48-hour podcast. Yeah.
And this kind of goes back to what Ben is saying. I think the DNC prepared very well for this election with the whole mail-in balloting. I totally agree with him.
I think Veronika pointed that out last week too.
Yeah, and I totally agree with him that
The only thing they did right.
Yeah, I mean,
either way, the Republicans got 70 million votes too, so both did something right. But yeah, go ahead.
Before COVID, Trump was on a glide path to victory. Everyone felt super comfortable. There was going to be a landslide. People were comparing it to Nixon's win. And, because the Democrats were such a shit show, and just, no one liked the riots. No one liked to fund the police. It just, of course, that was, I think, after COVID, but even before COVID, the economy was doing so well. Everyone expected, okay, this is going to be a landslide victory. And then, but the DNC did very, very well in winning all these sort of like local cases, getting local judges to agree with them, local state election boards, secretaries of state, kind of everything below the Supreme Court level, to include the Supreme Court. So in Pennsylvania, in the Supreme Court, they had some victories there. So for instance, Democrats requested 7 days after November 3rd in where people could turn in their mail-in ballots, and you wouldn't have to require signature matching or proof of postmark. However, the judge said no, not 7 days, 3 days, right? So still, because we're so used to seeing the elections roll in that night and being like, okay, so-and-so's won. But theoretically, this could allow, you see Trump's ahead by this many points, then you go like, oh shit, we need more mail-in ballots. So let's say that this happened, but you could theoretically do this without the matching signatures, without the proof of postmark, just sort of like find these mail-in ballots or harvest these mail-in ballots or get these mail-in ballots in just enough to meet that margin, and then you sort of relax. So it sort of lends the opportunity for fraud. And as you mentioned earlier today, I think there's one case that's over like 592 ballots, right? That's
right.
Montgomery County.
Montgomery County.
Yeah.
If you do counties, if you do all the counties in the state, it evens out.
Right. And I'm not saying that's what happened, but it's like, people are mocking, why it's 500 votes. It's not going to change the election. However, if there's so many allegations that I haven't, read all of them, but it's like there could be this Dominion glitch, like the software that was used across the country. So there's a lot going on with that. And I think there's a divide. There's a divide between, and it's not a pronounced divide, but there's a divide between people who think Trump has a chance, and then there's others who believe that he doesn't because it's too hard of a hurdle. But this is important for the future of elections, and they think that if these things are not caught, Republicans are never going to win another election.
Yeah. I mean, I think kind of what you're saying is like, here's where I come out on it. And I do get what Ben's saying, that it can come off. You can absolutely put yourself in the position to say that, hey, you're being a sore loser. But at the same time, no, don't accept it one way or the other, because if this stuff's going on, you need to find out. It doesn't matter who it is. It doesn't matter if it's whether Trump wins. It doesn't matter if it's whether a Democrat wins. We can't have this in our election system, period, regardless of who's the winner. So if there's a legitimate winner out there, fine, do whatever you have to do to unearth it and prove it. But it's the election system going forward as a whole. It's not about your side or my side. It's about the integrity of this being preserved. And so that's why I feel like, look, I get it. I remember 2016. I remember all the things the DNC was trying to come up with in the immediate aftermath of the election. Like, oh, we'll just not have our electorate or our whoever those guys, what the electors within the state.
Yeah, the electoral.
We just won't cast our actual ballot for Trump, whether he won that state or not. And that's what some of the Republican states are supposed to be saying right now, because all these states that are actually being contested, they all have Republican legislatures. No, I still don't know. I said it back then. I don't think you can do it now. I don't think you can get that many people on the same page, because it's just, you're asking for a lot of coordination that I don't think you could pull off. But it absolutely is a possible scenario if these people are willing to get in lockstep and do it.
Right.
And honestly, if there is legitimate concerns that votes have been tampered with, or they're voting the dead, or whatever the case may be, then they should be. The concern I have is when people like William Barr come in over the top. They're coming off the top rail saying, let's get the federal prosecutors in there. It's like, hey bro, what about states' rights? So let's let the states look at their own electoral processes first, and then if they think it needs to go outside the state because it's now a federal crime, then they get on the phone and say, hey, federal prosecutor, can you come and help me? As opposed to William Barr, releasing the hounds, Monty Burns style, to run around and make mischief. It doesn't make any sense to me. It seems that they jump in the gun over.
Go ahead, Veronika.
Sorry.
And she's already ate one of my cookies tonight. She's the worst.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. A fucking cookie monster within the mist.
Whatever. It was in public space.
No, you go ahead. Whatever. Just steal my
this
thunder.
Is
whatever.
Not for us to banter about fucking house issues, but finders keepers, motherfucker. Like, I want to hear it. So it's funny, like, and not to defend William Barr, right? But it's funny, like, if you read the memo that he put out, like, it's very specific about if you guys find legitimate claims of voter fraud, investigate. Like, he's very careful in his wording with that. I 130% agree that if there's legitimate concern about voter fraud, recount the motherfucking ballots. Like, that to me is preservation of democracy. And like the smug, like lesser adult in me is perfectly okay watching Trump lose twice. like I'm just, and don't get me wrong, I don't like Biden. Like, don't think that me being like, hey, I think that we need to take a different approach in this country as like pro Biden. I feel like people tend to be so like black and white on these things. Like, I'm not a single voter issue, and there are a lot of issues that I don't agree with Biden on. I don't agree with his his record, his political record on, right? And I don't know enough about I didn't think that Kamala Harris was enough of like a candidate for me to even invest that much time into researching until she was like a VP pick. And I'm like, wait, what the fuck?
She wasn't fucking running away with the primary either.
Well, yeah.
And
So
now here we
she
are.
just, and again, like she just didn't inspire me. I didn't really care for her as a politician, but you know, she's our VP elect now until something, or if something else happens.
Right.
I think the issue, I mean, I have several issues with the way that a lot of this stuff is being presented, right? Because like it's all coming down to, and you see a lot of memes kind of flying around, but food for thought. It's really interesting to me that we've had a lot of Republican seats and even a lot of moderate Democrats that lost their seats to Republicans on the exact same ballot where Biden also won.
Which is, does that make sense?
Well, it does. You have a lot of Republicans that came forward because if you look at like things like the Lincoln Project, a lot of people.
No, that's a fucking scam. Fuck.
You have a lot, bro. Like,
oh God, they didn't. They spent $50 million and they didn't do anything. Trump got 70 million Republican votes. They didn't do anything.
Kellyanne Conway's husband is one of the people that runs it.
The Lincoln Project. No, fucking Rick Wilson. That guy is such a. Never
So
mind. Anyway,
Kellyanne Conway's husband is one of the fucking founders of this organization, or one of the guys that runs it. Kellyanne Conway's been on the in the Trump administration from jump, so that's always been a really interesting dynamic for me. But with that said, like you have a lot of Republicans, regardless of Lincoln Project being a bullshit project or not. Like again, I don't consider myself a Republican, but you have a lot of Republicans that felt like the Republican Party is going in a direction that is no longer in line with their values. So they voted for Biden as a president and they voted Republican down the ticket. And it's really interesting to sort of hear those interviews of people that did vote that way.
I don't think that's a big enough mark. Like I see where you're coming from, but I mean, the dude got 70 million votes. Like, it's not like there was this mass exodus of Republicans.
That's the thing. You had a lot of first-time voters in this election as well. Trump got more white female voters this election than he did in the last election.
Right. More married.
And both candidates got more votes than any other president, surpassing Obama in the 2008 election. Like,
oh yeah, they crushed it. Like, everyone finally just, well, not everyone, but
I think
more people decided to show up and play this time.
Right. And for me, and
which I'm cool with.
And I think that there's a lot of factors that come into play, right? Like you have you have a lot of mail-in voting and aka absentee voting. They're the same thing. You had a lot of absentee voting that was being encouraged this election, and a lot of people are laid off from their jobs. So guess what? They have the time to fucking sit there and wait all day in the fucking rain and the snow to vote this time. Which is, again, I believe that it should be a federal holiday.
Yeah, I agree.
It should be an obligatory thing to vote. Like it should be like, I think it's a civic duty. Right. That's a whole other thing. And then the other thing that I have with that, like as for disqualifying ballots, like, again, I think that there should be like compulsory voting in this country at the age of 18 and on. With that, like there is in Australia. With that said, I don't agree that, hey, if after November 3rd your ballot was postmarked after November 3rd, it shouldn't count. It shouldn't, because of exactly that, right? Like people just fucking sending in ballots for whichever fucking candidate, like people just fucking sending in mass ballots for Joe Jorgensen. Kanye West. I don't give a shit who it's for.
Kobe.
But at the end of the day, right, if your shit's postmarked after November 3rd, it should be invalidated.
Right. I agree.
Like,
good.
Sorry,
I'm glad we got that settled. All right, Kristina, real quick.
No,
actually, you don't even have to be real quick. You know what? We're not even gonna do the COVID shit. We'll do that next week. Just fucking. We'll just keep. I thought we had like 4 minutes on this, but everyone's got plenty. So just fucking.
Damn it! Look at all the notes I had just about COVID.
Ben's got more notes. Right, Kristina, we'll come to you, and then Ben, you're next. Get ready for the fucking note. Look at this. It looks like we're cramming for a test tomorrow.
You guys are that fucking Charlie Day meme with the like.
Look, here's my notes right here. That's it. That's.
Be like the crazy person who's like,
like putting this shit up. Oh, that reminds me of this show. Oh, I got so many shows.
You need red string, Kristina. Red string for next week.
Yeah, get some string.
Lots of push pins.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that.
I'm buying you. I'm gonna come visit. I'm gonna come visit you someday. I'm buying you a corkboard and a big red marker. Like.
Yep,
and a picture of Alex Jones wearing aluminum foil on his head.
Oh yeah, we'll
and George Soros and Alex.
And then
you know what? No one said anything about George Soros in this election yet.
Yes, they have. I've heard it.
I'm about to say I haven't heard shit. Everything's
the
just-
QAnon crowd.
Oh,
my
never mind.
favorite. My favorite.
All right, purple drank. What you got?
Well, this is completely irrelevant to everything we were talking about, but
Oh, sweet.
Are you wearing a onesie?
Me? What? Or
No, him.
Eric?
No, it's a
I'm
USA
wearing-
sweater.
A tank top. No, it was funny because so in DC, where I am, I guess I can disclose that to all the crazies that may stalk me or not stalk me or whatever. Dogs.
You have a lot of fans, Kristina.
I don't know. You probably hate following me.
You have a lot of fans that are like over the age of 60.
My brother-in-law's dad's in love with you.
Oh
I might
God!
need an autograph and send it to
dude-
him for Christmas.
Veronika, if you ever had an increased presence on Twitter, you'd suffer the same fate as Kristina. But
I
know.
I tweet like one thing each
I know.
month.
there's no anonymous following on fucking Facebook. Either are friends or you're not. But on Twitter, oh yeah, you should just watch if Kristina tweets this out this week. Just watch the people who respond.
You do get a lot of dudes simping on you, girl.
Oh yeah, it's funny. I love it. Hey, because as long as they listen, whatever, I don't care.
Shout out to the Simps, right?
Hey.
Simp harder. All right.
Gateway to Veronika, who, according to Maddie, is hot, right?
Yes, Maddie says you're both hot. Well, wait till she sees Ben. Actually, Maddie.
Oh my God.
Maddie and I are friends on Insta now.
I gotta get Maddie.
I'll just send her Ben's profile.
Yeah, there you go. Do that. Like, oh, Ben's cute. Yeah, I know he's cute, babe. Enough. Turn that off.
You can have him, just don't eat his cookies because then he turns into a child. Fucking child.
That's it. Next week's going to be all about our household issues. Just dish about domestic shit of having Veronika as a roommate.
I would actually like to hear that. We should probably just do that twice separate. Let's just get 3 hours of like open forum. Just talk about Veronika as a roommate.
Just fuck me up, fam.
Right?
Yeah. The chandelier behind her looks nice. At least you have good taste, Veronika. I think you gotta like. It's good. Look at that.
Classy. I'm a classy broad.
Yeah. You look around in here. This is all Maddie. Everyone's like, "Oh wow, your place is nice." I'm like, I just fucking live there. I got nothing to do with it.
I said it earlier. I thought I made it, but Kristina's got to live in bartender. So
That's true.
Apparently,
With purple drank.
Ben, you need
Damn.
to step up your game.
I really-
Wow.
Wow.
That's
also
where we're
good.
at.
He forced me to send a picture of our dinner last night to Gordon Ramsay, who's like,
Oh. Nice.
he said, and he forced me to. And Gordon Ramsay likes to respond in mean tweets.
That's right. He does. It's funny.
Did he respond?
Hey, fun
Didn't.
fact. So Kristina Wilson, who's like one of the main chefs for his organization, when she won Hell's Kitchen, her and I used to chat very briefly on Twitter, and now I've come to know her and meet her over the years. So I've got an in. She's supposed to be on the podcast one of these days. She's got to come back to the States. She's over in the UK, I think, at the moment. But Chef
Well,
Kristina
you need
Wilson,
to get
look at
her to respond to the picture of the dinner first. That's important.
I'll message her on the gram and see if she can.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
get that-
Thank you.
Get that hookup.
That,
Yeah.
food pic.
You're welcome. Yeah, I thought you were going to say so. We probably lost what the hell we were talking about at this point, which is fine.
Gonna say that was completely irrelevant is that in DC you have only very limited parties to choose from, right? You have Democrat and like one independent. So, and I didn't know any of these people. So I admit I voted for a guy because his middle name was Cheeks.
Cheeks.
His middle name was
Fair.
Cheeks?
His middle name was Recovery. So his name was John Recovery Cheeks.
I'd have voted for him.
Yeah, why not? It doesn't matter.
YOLO.
It's DC. I mean, what
Yeah,
do you-
Democrat versus like Democrat. I'm like, I don't know who these people are. I know this is very taboo to say, like that you just threw away your vote to someone you had no idea about, but it's like there's a silence that has been cast over the podcast.
I told you
not at
I
all.
told you guys last time that I threw away my vote in 2016. I wrote in Bernie Sanders like across a mail-in ballot.
Dude, I voted for Ralph Nader in 2000. I'm responsible for the Supreme Court challenge with Bush and Gore.
And
Hanging
the voter and the
chads.
alleged voter
Yeah, the
voter
hanging
fraud that
chads.
year. And the yeah. The whole
Ben,
alleged
ben
voter fraud.
is it as organized in Australia as it is here? I know you said there's only 27 million, but still, how does it go down there? Is it one night,
so
one day still?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and like you described before, it's a bit like Super Bowl. So they'll have the tally and people will be all excited about it. So you've got so the Australian Electoral Commission runs it all. I shouldn't disclose this because it's going to get recorded, but you're supposed to register this the day you turn 18. And then from then on, you have to, it's compulsory for you to at least attend a polling place for, county, state and federal elections. And if you don't, you get fined.
I was going to
So
say,
that part I don't agree with.
Yeah.
So me and Veronika have had this discussion a bunch.
The fine's pretty low though, right? It's like $50 or something. Or
No.
50 kangaroo dollars or whatever.
Wow. I was waiting for the racist comment and it was you. Well done.
Australian isn't a race.
It is. We come from the land down under.
That's not a knife.
Learn your terms. I'm not a racist. I'm a xenophobe.
Yeah, that's true. She's very.
You're an Antipodean hater.
There you go.
And then basically you attend a polling place, show ID, you vote, it gets counted, and I think it's easier because it's more stringent, and also we only have 7 states and a couple of territories as opposed to 50, and it's the same process in every election. So you get a paper ballot. The Senate's pretty complex because you can have a party of one person in the Senate in Australia, and we have some weird parties like the motoring enthusiast party or the sex party or the
that's how the European Union is. Same shit.
Yeah.
Their parliament.
So now the lower house, so we have the same bicameral system as the UK. We stole it being
that means 2 houses bicameral.
It does.
Go ahead.
So we stole the exact same concept of, the House of Commons and the House of Lords, but in Australia we call it, the lower house and the Senate, same basic difference.
Hey, Ben, hold on real quick. Maddie, is Ben an attractive man?
Ben is a very attractive man.
See, there we go. And Dottie thinks so too. Dottie says, look, 2 women, 3, 4, all. Ben, you're the winner.
Ben, what's wrong? Why are you asking if you're attractive? Or
no,
not?
he's not.
It didn't come up.
I'm just trying to see how much I can pimp him out for. I'm trying to.
I said Ben is attractive, and Maddie would probably come out here and agree.
I agree.
And he's Australian.
Oh, he's Australian.
Listen, Ben, say something.
Today. I was trying to explain how the Australian electoral system works, but apparently this has turned into video Tinder.
He's blonde. This is not
you can listen to the entire podcast tomorrow.
Eric who? Eric who?
Never heard of her.
Never.
Well, there we go, Ben. You're up.
I guess I'm going to get invited back next week now.
You come over anytime, buddy.
Can I make a semi-serious point? Because
sure, do it. Save
Ben, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so as an addendum to the cheeks thing, so when I got to the DC polling site, it was kind of like I get what all the lawsuits are. Some of the lawsuits are about having counters there because. When you get there, you have all these people just sort of watching you and making sure like, okay, so you don't have anything with any candidate's name on it once you get there, right? Because after a certain distance, you're not supposed to have anything that says anyone's name on it, any candidate's name, because then I guess it's like you're campaigning or something. So as I approached the auditorium, the school auditorium, someone's like, oh, put that away, because I was holding a flyer that someone gave me, and we actually voted for him because he was really nice and he chatted with us.
That's how you win elections.
I am a serious voter.
What is
You're
it?
wrong.
Is it? It's not retail politics. Is it? It is retail
Like
politics.
another politics or something. Even though
there's a term for that, basically. Like I think it is retail politics, where you have a face-to-face interaction with everybody, with the voter. Yeah, something like that.
There were like 3 candidates, and he came up and had a chat and was like, "What's important to you?" And we talked to him, and I'm like, you know what? He's a nice guy. I have no idea who this other person is, so I'm going to vote for this person. Anyway, so I get into the auditorium, And it's kind of strange, like when you fill in your ballot and then you give it to someone and there's no covering on your ballot, and that person just like takes it and puts it into the machine and can see how you voted. And I
Yeah.
felt kind of weird about that, like not that there was any
It's
kind of
definitely an in-person thing, right?
it's like such a personal thing. And in the past I voted at I think at a church or somewhere
Yeah.
else, because I lived in a different area, and there were little booths with curtains, and
Yeah.
it felt very secure. And this time there were no curtains; it was just kind of out in the open. So you just had like a you had like a little stand where my back was completely open, and there were poll watchers sort of nearby, and actually asked one of them, like, hey, can I take out my cell phone so I could do some research on some of the DC council people? And they're like, yeah, sure. And it was just kind of felt very impersonal. So I can, and poll watchers, they're supposed to be one from each party, I think, in the room or something. So I can get how, if you don't have these things, and if you do have someone who, I don't know, has malign intentions, as we get these anecdotal reports, like of ballots being tossed, or Republicans being kept away or something like that. I can see how people would be extremely upset about that. Or with Sharpie Gate, I'm not sure about the details, but if you had used a Sharpie in at least one instance, it bled through, and then you hit a button that said cast or something, and then it erased who you voted for or something like that. And so I could see how these little tiny things seem really insignificant, but when you're there, this sort of it all kind of adds up to this sense of fairness. Like,
Yeah.
when you left that auditorium, did your ballot count, or did that person you handed your ballot to see who you voted for and then did something? I don't know if I'm sounding like a crazy conspiracist.
No, I mean, I
Yeah,
see
so-
that because I mean, I can recall the last two elections I've mailed in my ballot, and I've had to seal it, I've had to sign it. My signature had to be on file before I ever left the county to match it up with. But the ones you're describing, my last two were the same thing. Like, I went to a local church in Orlando. I handed it to the poll. One of the poll workers that I turned it into actually was like the father-in-law of my aunt, and he's no longer with us, but I remember turning it into him. And I was just like, oh, this is cool. And he like took it and he immediately ran it through the counter.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying, mostly because I think back then, no one thought about this, like 08, 04, 2012, whatever. But now you look for the last two election cycles, all these polling companies, and they've all been wrong because no one feels safe. No, I'm not saying no one does, but a lot of people don't feel safe, or they don't feel like their integrity is protected by admitting that they're going to vote for Trump, because they're just going to be attacked or demonized. And that's why the polls have been severely, like, they've put them out of business these last two cycles because they've been that fucking wrong. There's my first F-bomb. But no one should feel that way. If you want to vote for Biden, you want to vote for Trump, fucking scream it from the rooftop and not feel bad about it. But that's not where we're at, unfortunately, in 2020, even in 2016. You were made to feel like you were a terrible person if you voted against Hillary Clinton, literally the worst candidate ever on any side in any election, period. All right.
No, I feel like Walter Mondale was the
Mondale,
worst.
based on I mean, Reagan beat him like what, 530 to 8. Yeah, it was pretty bad.
He won a state, his home state. That was it. Reagan destroyed him at an atomic level. Yeah.
But if you said you were going to vote for Mondale, no one made you feel bad about it. You're just like, really? But yeah, that was definitely, we'll probably
Simpler
never see
times.
a literal beat down like that again.
But real quickly, this is
go ahead. Go for it, Ben. I'm running out of
the foreign kid. This is why I'm amazed that there are so many different voting processes, and states' rights are good to a point. But then when something like this federal election happens, I look at it and go, well, if everyone just had the same process, then it would be a heck of a lot easier to monitor.
Yeah.
So
I think what Veronika was arguing last week.
Different voting machines that work different ways, and some of them are pretty easily to hack. And then you've got mail-in votes that can
that's right. I
be
agree.
postmarked to certain dates and all the rest of it. So real simple, have the same process for the federal election, for the Congress, the Senate, the presidential election, for every state, the same mail-in date.
We can't have him back on. No.
And then make sure that people present ID.
No.
Simple.
Veronica's not in
So-
favor of that, I don't think.
Well,
So the only, so it's funny. It's not, okay, so it's not that I'm not in
He's a
favor
cookie
of
stealer,
IDs.
so what do we expect?
Cookie thief.
yeah,
And,
she's,
and
she's,
honestly,
she's high on sugar.
fuck off. So the only thing, so I have my points that I want to make.
Yeah, make your points.
Make my points. I got points to make. I got things to say. I got things to say. I got opinions. No, so the only thing that I disagree about IDs, and the only thing is that kind of disenfranchises the homeless from voting, which we don't really pull them into voting anyway. Like,
Okay.
voting
You
is a
said
right.
it disenfranchises who?
It disenfranchises like the homeless population or people that don't have up-to-date IDs. Now, again, you'd be surprised how many elderly people don't have IDs either. A lot, a
Yeah,
fucking ton of them.
look,
But again, that's a small population.
exactly.
My opinion in that is, if this is going to be a mandatory thing, we need to make sure that all of these things are accessible in order for voting to be accessible.
And
I
real
also
quick,
think
to
that
do-
voter
hold on.
registration should be mandatory, and I think it should be like an automatic thing that happens when you turn 18, like selective service.
Yeah. Well, I've got some Look, we've been able to put homeless people into the fucking military, where they've been able to come up with not only just their ID, but their fucking diplomas, their social security card, and their actual birth certificate. So please spare me on whether or not we're disenfranchising the homeless from voting, because I've never seen a homeless guy at the fucking poll ever.
I'm not.
But if they want to vote, I'm for it. I'm just saying.
Well, I think homelessness and like mental health and whole other things that we've discussed on this podcast before, or like that's like a series of like layered issues that have, that's like that is a myriad of problems in and of itself, right? Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree with Ben. I think it should be the same across the board. But as for not feeling safe about poll workers, so I volunteered when I turned 18. It was a 2008 election. I know I'm, dating myself a little bit here. I'm a child. But I remember, I was this fucking starry-eyed idiot about the future of our country. Yeah, exactly. Just dumb and just an idiot. And
were you 18 then?
I was 18 and I volunteered to be a poll worker because it was the first year that I was eligible to vote.
That's actually pretty cool that you did that. I always thought only old people should do that shit. But.
Right. So I was super fucking excited about it. I got my little like Orange County poll worker, in Orange County, California, which is, if everybody knows, Republican Central in California.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to watch because we have a lot of elderly people in that county. So one of the things as poll workers that we're asked to do with the like electric voting machines, if somebody needs help voting, we can help show them select what language to choose depending on what they need, and like stand with them to make sure that what they're doing, if they request for help. So I remember going, and I remember a lot of older Hispanic people showing up to vote, and because I spoke Spanish, they were like, "Hey, can you please assist them?" Yeah, sure. Walk on over. And I can't even begin to tell you how many older Hispanics voted for Obama and then like anti-gay rights, because we had like Prop 8 at the time, which was like the LGBT. This is in 2008, which was like the LGBT.
Well, Obama was still anti-gay rights and shit back then.
He was.
He came out yet.
He was. Right. But like, again, the whole democratic, like semi-progressive agenda, which apparently the DNC can't fucking come to like agreement on.
Plus,
but it was like voting for Obama, and then it was like voting for every conservative measure that we had on the ballot. And I remember just like watching this and being like, this is like, from like a psychological or from like a social psychology perspective, like, this is fascinating. No, it's not.
I think they should
most Hispanics are fucking homophobes. And I'm gonna say most. Oh, yeah. I know I'm generalizing. A lot of older Hispanics.
Second racist comment for the night.
Hey, it goes with that stereotype that liberals are actually the most racist people on the planet. So.
Wow.
It's a true story. If you say it enough, it's true. Plus, I recorded it, so now it's definitely true.
fuck it, whatever. So it's funny because like even my grandmother, like growing up, you know, like my grandmother, I'm gonna get dragged for this, but my grandmother's again like born and raised in Mexico, but she like for real was raised being afraid of Black people just because of the time that she was raised in. And she honest to God thought Obama was gonna go to the White House and like steal everything. And I'm like, who do you think he's gonna run off with a presidential fucking paintings? Who's gonna take the desk? What do you think he's taking, Grandma?
Did he get rid of that statue that the British sent to, like,
Remember that shit? Like, yeah, he stole it. So, but again, like, and I again believe people can change, right? Because towards the end of his presidency, my grandmother at the end of 7 years was like, I really think that he did a lot for the Hispanic population. I really respect this man. I want to get my citizenship this year before he leaves office. So my grandmother got her citizenship at the end of the Obama administration because she respected him so much and she wanted his signature on her naturalization paperwork.
Don't you remember all those guys that refused to retire because they didn't want Obama's
right? The opposite of that.
Yeah, the exact opposite.
So that, right? And the only other thing that I kind of want to like circle back to,
circling.
So this was something that I thought about because I know that I brought it up in a previous podcast, how I, talked about how Trump had lied about, the severity of COVID at the beginning and how if COVID wouldn't have happened, Trump would have won. And one of the things that kind of, because I remember like trying to draw a parallel on how I felt in that moment that I realized, because it's not just Trump, right? Like we can say it was Trump all day long, but really it's an administration of people that all knew that this was going to be a lot more severe than it was. And it's easy to sort of point the finger and blame Trump for everything, but there are other people in the room during these briefings. There are other people that know and understand the gravity of the situation that also didn't say anything, right? And that, to me,
we don't know though. That's just so hard. Like I don't like playing armchair court. It doesn't matter if it's Trump or if it's a Republican. Like I would never sit there and try and second guess a fucking Democrat. Like I'm not in that. I'm not being presented with this. I'm not being forced to make these decisions. And I just hate how people in general are so easy to just be like, oh, well, he didn't do anything. Like what the fuck do you know?
Yes.
Like you don't know.
That's true. And I can add, like, just looking at the timeline very specifically, I think he was told on January 28th that it was transmitted, airborne, and 2 days later, he canceled travel to the US from China. And I think I had a friend on Twitter anecdotally say like, oh, I know a guy who got in anyway or something. I think maybe he was like a US citizen coming in from China in a case where you can't deny him entrance or whatever. But Trump acted very quickly and he was called, as he points out, a xenophobe. Yep. So he did act very quickly. And just watching these briefings, I think a lot of the problems that Trump has is because of his rhetoric. He talks, and I've explained this to Aaron too, he talks to achieve something. It's a strategy to achieve an end. So sometimes he says things that are off the wall. Like if you take the first debate, he was like heckling Biden. And it was to get, I believe it was to get him to take one side or the other. He was going to be anti-socialist or pro-socialist. And so he was trying to drive it there without realizing maybe he seemed like a bully or whatever. And when he comes out and he says, there's voter fraud, blah, blah, blah. And people are like, well, prove it then. This is just anti-democratic, blah, 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 and so I think what he's trying to do is kind of create that doubt so that there will be some breaks to declaring Biden, a winner. And so he speaks to achieve an end, not to sort of be fact checked. You know what I mean? And
yeah, and I could understand that if the one thing that I come back to every time any argument is made to like, hey, well, this is what his intent was, like saying, hey, this will be gone by the summer. This isn't that serious. It's no more serious than the flu. And right, in hindsight, everything's 2020. But ultimately, if he would have set a different tone from the beginning, especially with his followers, who then immediately thought like this thing is a Democratic hoax because it was fake news, liberal hoax, COVID isn't real, which started trending. And that to me is fucking crazy because, hey, turns out it's very real. And at that time that he made these comments, he understood and knew the severity of what was happening. The one thing, and I know it's a Russia parallel, and that's not what I mean here, but like the one thing that I realized it clicked the other day, what it reminded me of, if any of you guys have ever seen the show Chernobyl on HBO, and they're briefing how severe the radiation problem is, and they're like, it's no worse than an X-ray, and they're like, no, and you have the one guy in the room that's like, no, it's not, and obviously exposes how severe of a problem this is, and they were able to tackle it before it fucked up the entire country and really ended up poisoning all of Europe if it got into the underground water sources. They ended up effectively, like, that one guy standing up for the right thing effectively saved millions of people from dying. And I just wonder why somebody wasn't that voice in the room, or if there was. And I struggle to justify any, and like, if it would have happened under any other presidency, and I don't give a fuck, red, blue, what team you play for, whatever, ultimately I feel at some point responsibility has to be taken by the person that made the comment, hey, it's not that serious. And then in hindsight, millions of people died because we didn't wear masks. Like, maybe we didn't have to have the shutdown. Don't get me wrong, like, we have businesses that are never going to recover from this. Families that are fucking bankrupt that are probably not going to financially recover from this. We have people who have lost their savings, who are going to struggle for the next God knows how many years. And that's just the economy. Like, those are just the economic ramifications. But like, we have people that are literally celebrating the holidays this year without mothers, fathers, grandparents, children, whatever, what have you. And like, it's in the millions. It's a lot of people globally. And that's what I struggle with, is that at some point, the responsibility and the onus has to come down at the buck stops somewhere, and the buck stops in our leadership. And our leader effectively did the wrong thing in hindsight. And I don't feel like he's ever taken responsibility for that. And
unfortunately, everything you just described, because I want to go to Ben, because I got two questions for him really, but everything you just described, the only other alternative seems like everything should have just been shut down from the start. And none of this would have changed. The outcome would be the exact same. The outcome would be the same.
Look at Cuomo. I mean, where was the epicenter of the coronavirus? It was in New York. Did he ever shut down the subway? Never. There were people saying he should shut down the subway and commandeer taxis and drive people who are essential workers to work. And then this whole like nursing care debacle, nursing home debacle. I mean, and I have a friend who, a close relative died and she was heartbroken, but she still supported Trump because I think she realized that, this was this deadly virus that no one else had seen. And, now I sound like Trump, but it was like this deadly virus that, the world had never dealt with. And places like Taiwan, they were very prepared because they had dealt with SARS before. And I mean, China's behavior was completely abominable. And, while Trump had formed a coronavirus team, I know this sounds like a lame talking point, but you had Nancy Pelosi in Chinatown saying like, hey, everyone, come down to Chinatown, celebrate. And that's not to cast aspersion on Chinese in Chinatown, but it's sort of like come gather and dance and whatever. And then I think you had the same in New York too. So I think
you did.
It was an unforeseen event, and it was
actually the new, I think the guy that's supposed to be the chief of staff for Biden was saying that in New York, come to Chinatown. I think it was that guy. Anyway, all right.
Don't get me started on performative activism, because I'll
right. So Ben, all right, two things, Ben. I know you've been patiently, like, very respectful. What a nice Aussie. I like that. Very nice.
He's not.
At least for the camera, he is. All right. So that's all I know of him. And besides, you already admitted to stealing the man's cookies. So like, your opinion is a little slanted, if we will.
It was a social distribution. I remember, I'm a socialist liberal. I was spreading the wealth.
Spreading the cookie wealth. All right, exactly. Ben, two things before and then we'll just wrap this up and we'll continue next week, because we're running long and we didn't even get into half the stuff, which is fine with me. It gives us more stuff to talk about next week. But Ben, what went on with Australia in terms of this that you saw, in terms of the virus? because I don't know how much it was effective or how effective it was or how much it impacted the Australian population. That, and then also get us out of here with just kind of what you see or what you think we need to fucking do from an outside perspective. Because that's what I'm really interested in your take on tonight, is just, you're watching this. I know you're here. You immersed yourself in everything that this the United States is doing at this point. But just from an outside perspective, what the hell went well or bad in Australia with this? And then just what do you think we need to do going forward between now and whenever, what is it, January 20th is the potential inauguration, with all this stuff pending in the courts and all. Take it away, Ben.
So Australia's total death count as at today is 819. Like I said, much smaller population, but it's still at 27 million. Australia has severely locked down, and so the nearest capital city to where I kind of live when I'm actually in Australia is Melbourne, and they've been through some severe lockdowns to the point where folks weren't allowed to travel outside of a 5-kilometre radius. I don't know what that is in witchcraft. I don't speak miles.
About 2.5, 3 miles, right? Yeah.
Sure. So, and as a result of that, the daily counts dropped down to a point where I think it's been 11 days in a row now where there hasn't been a new case of COVID in the country. So an entire continent that is not transmitting COVID. So two differences. There was a national policy in terms of lockdowns, wearing masks, social distancing, business closures, all that kind of stuff, which is the only way to do it. Because as soon as you let someone squirt out and, go and see their buddy next, the next zip code over, then it's going to spread. There were roadblocks checking people's ID to see where they were from and say, hey, buddy, you're outside your 5 kilometers, you need to go home. And at the start, it was warnings. And if people continued to kind of push the envelope, then relatively large fines sort of ensued. So now some folks will talk about, my individual freedoms or whatever, but it's the difference between 819 deaths and 2 million plus or whatever it is at the moment here. So that's one major.
It's like 200,000.
That's cases, yeah, 242,000.
Okay, sorry. So that was one thing. The other thing that I think America kind of did differently and not as well was the stimulus check. So my sister and brother-in-law have a small business in Australia and have a thing. I'm not sure if it's federal or state level, but it's called JobKeeper. So what the government is doing is it's paying small businesses to keep staff on. So anyone who'd been working full-time for my sister and brother-in-law in their small cafe, I think for at least 12 months prior to COVID kicking in, and provided they could demonstrate that they were down 30% on their monthly or quarterly take, then the government gave them a subsidy to still pay a wage. Now, why I think that's smarter, and it's another way that other countries have done it, is the government's it's semi-recycling. So the government gives money to a business. The business then has to pay business and payroll tax off the top of that government handout, so to speak. And then a worker gets paid and still has to pay income tax. So it's not just here's $1,200, which someone then goes and potentially spends on a Chinese television. So it doesn't even go back into the US economy.
Spend it on a rifle. That's what we spend it on. Anyway, go ahead.
It goes offshore. So whereas in Australia, so my sister and brother-in-law had, I think, 5 staff that fit into that category. And so they were getting them in to do things like, renovations, remodeling, deep cleaning, because they were shut. No one could come in. They rejigged their business model so that when they were allowed to, they could open up for takeaway. So it gave businesses opportunity to survive through the pandemic so that the economy was in a better position to restart, as opposed to everyone gets laid off, everyone goes home, here's $1,200, buy a new rifle, buy a new Xbox. So I think the two things that the US could have done a lot better was a more federal approach to, hey, everyone should probably just stop and not be driving all over the country, licking doorknobs and handing off the Rona to their buddies. Wearing masks, I think, was another thing that will prove, as the data comes in, that was a massive mistake to not force people to wear a mask properly. And then the last one was the stimulus check and the fact that both houses completely dropped the ball when it came to a second round of stimulus, because they're all hiding in their nice $1 million mansions, too busy to go back in and sit and actually talk about how they're going to jumpstart the economy.
And collecting a fucking
they-
taxpayer-funded paycheck.
Yeah, they're getting $750,000 to sit around and tell essential workers that they can get an IOU at a grocery store because they're that out of touch with how the common person in America lives week to week. So,
Oh,
that's all I've got.
California's a great example. You should check out. And look what was Mayor Lightfoot was putting out on her Twitter profile on her timeline today. You should go check that out, Veronika, when you're done.
Oh God.
You will not have Thanksgiving as you traditionally do. You will not. We will be sending people to your door to check.
You will not. But as Nancy Pelosi goes and gets her fucking hair done.
Exactly.
I saw a great tweet about
up.
a loophole that the easiest way to have Thanksgiving, if you wanted to get people around, was to say it was a funeral, dead turkey, and then that meant you get 8 or 10 people around your house, and it was a loophole. So
that's how we'll do
Got
it.
a death in the family.
I'm gonna have a protest at my house. We're gonna have like topics to like
I like
things
that.
we
That's
all,
another good loophole.
and that's
protest.
we're gonna have
That's good. A rally. We'll have a rally.
a potluck protest
Yeah, we'll
at
have
my
a potluck
place.
rally.
So
That's good. I like
anybody if anybody in the Bragg area doesn't have family to go home,
that. All right.
hit me up.
So that's all right. We've covered this. We did way more than I thought we would on this topic. So we'll just carry everything over to the next week because it's not going anywhere. But anyway, remember, you may not think like us, but you probably think like one of us. Ben, thanks for stopping in and joining us tonight, drinking your incredible Hulk, stealing my girlfriend's affections. It's wonderful. Veronika, thanks a lot for breaking up a happy home. Kristina, thanks for joining us as well. And Aaron, the bartender, dropping us some purple drink. We'll see you guys all next week. Remember, there will be banter. Watch, like, subscribe, share, do whatever. Follow us. Thank you. Good night.